The hum of the hovering drones was the first thing Dr. Elias Kane noticed as he stepped into the main hall of the Erythian Medica, though he suspected it had nothing to do with welcoming him. One drone zipped past his shoulder, carrying a tray of pulsating vials that looked like miniature suns, and veered too close for comfort. Kane swatted it away, muttering something about over-caffeinated machinery, and narrowly avoided a collision with a maintenance robot that insisted on reciting its own poetry about quantum flux. The hall itself stretched like a spine of glass and chrome, punctuated by floating gardens whose bioluminescent leaves pulsed with the same rhythm as the warning lights on the lab doors. Somewhere in the distance, a gravity elevator whined, and a janitor in zero-gravity boots tripped spectacularly on a stray flux cable. Kane wondered briefly if this was what being in an alien hospital was supposed to feel like, chaos with style. Lysera lay on the levitating examination table in the center of the room, her pale skin reflecting the soft green glow from the bioluminescent vines, her long ears flicking now and then like delicate radar dishes. She opened one eye just enough to glare at Kane and said, "You're human. I'm already regretting everything about this." Kane smiled, which in his defense was partly because she looked more like a human woman than an alien, aside from those long ears that seemed to have their own opinions. "You're judging too quickly," he replied, keeping his tone casual. "I'm the type who fixes the unfixable or at least makes it look entertaining while failing." Her eyes narrowed, but a hint of amusement curled at the corners of her lips. The Erythian Medical Council hovered in a semicircle, their translucent robes catching the faint light in distracting patterns. They whispered among themselves in a language that Kane couldn't parse, though he caught a few words that sounded alarmingly like hopeless and human interference. One of them, tall and angular, raised a hand toward him, voice syrupy with authority. "Dr. Kane, the patient is beyond recovery. Any further attempts will be inadvisable." Kane grinned. "Ah, but inadvisable is my favorite flavor of risk. Plus, I think she's cute when she's sulking." The council blinked in unison, the alien equivalent of a collective eye roll. Lysera twitched her ears and whispered, "I hate you already." Kane rolled up his sleeves, revealing the human penchant for too much optimism and not enough containment protocols. He circled the table, checking the sensors and scanning the faint, irregular pulses of life within her. Nanobots swirled invisibly in her bloodstream, performing a desperate dance that had failed countless times under the hands of her own species. "Okay," Kane muttered, "they're cute little things, but they obviously have no idea what we're doing here." Lysera's ears twitched at the sound of the word cute, and she muttered, "I hope you don't plan to cuddle them too." The first step involved syncing his portable human neural interface with the alien biobot network. Every time he adjusted a parameter, a nearby panel flashed a warning in a script that looked like glowing spiderwebs, and the AI nurse floated by, chirping, "System integrity compromised." Kane quipped, "Relax, I've done this before sort of sometimes." Lysera rolled her eyes, or at least she would have if her face muscles had room to. "Sometimes is not a medical standard," she said dryly. "Do your best, or I'm letting the nanobots reorganize your teeth." Hours passed with Kane tweaking, calibrating, and improvising. Every small success brought him a grin, every setback prompted a muttered curse and a flurry of adjustments. Lysera, though weak, kept up a running commentary of sardonic humor. "You know, humans always think we're dramatic," she said as one particularly unruly nanobot zipped past her ear. "But watching you fumble with alien tech is a form of entertainment I didn't know I needed." Kane laughed and replied, "Glad to serve. Entertainment and life-saving, two birds, one human." Her long ears flicked in what might have been amusement or a minor attempt at discipline. Kane wasn't sure which. At one point, a minor system glitch caused the floating table to tilt dangerously. Kane lunged to stabilize it, catching her with a precision that was almost accidental. "Careful," she said, attempting sarcasm but managing a faint smile. "Humans are lucky I'm dying. Otherwise, you'd have a lecture on gravity safety right now." Kane chuckled, holding her steady. "I take all critiques under extreme duress." She gave a short, exasperated laugh, and for a moment, the clinical tension dissolved into something lighter. He noticed subtle signs that her body was responding to his intervention, tiny flickers of color in the nanobot clusters, a soft pulse that hadn't been there before. "See?" Kane said, voice tinged with triumph. I told you we humans are full of surprises. Lysera's ears twitched with skepticism. Surprises, she said slowly, are sometimes lethal, don't get cocky. By nightfall, the hall had emptied of most council members, leaving Kane and Lysera alone with the humming machines and the occasional patter of floating gardens adjusting to the gravity field. She tried to joke, though faintly, about him being a mad scientist with bad table manners, and he returned equally flippant remarks about the medical AI having an attitude problem. But beneath the humor, both sensed the fragile thread of hope stretching between them. Her pulse had stabilized, her biobots were responding, and the impossible, at least for now, seemed just within reach. Kane leaned back, exhausted but smiling, as Lysera's long ears twitched rhythmically, a subtle sign she was, perhaps, tolerating him. And somewhere in the hum of neon lights and whirring drones, Kane realized that saving her would be more than just a medical feat. It would be a lesson in trust, stubbornness, and a human sense of humor the Erythians had never anticipated. Kane had barricaded the lab doors with nothing more than a couple of portable force fields and his own stubborn determination, though the AI signage outside still blinked warnings like it was auditioning for a drama about impending doom. Lysera lay on the levitating table, weak but awake, eyes half-lidded in that alien way that made him think she was both judging him and secretly amused. Her long ears twitched with every sound, the hum of the lab, the faint whir of the floating nutrient drones, and Kane's own nervous tapping on the console. She raised a single brow, or the closest approximation of a brow that Erythians could manage. So, human, she said, voice laced with dry amusement, you intend to poke and prod at my failing systems all day, or is there a plan hiding behind those knuckles of yours? Kane grinned. There's a plan, he said, tapping his fingers on the interface. It involves a moderate amount of chaos, a small chance of explosive failure, and possibly saving your life. Pick one. Lysera let out a quiet huff that might have been a laugh if humans weren't so loud about it. Moderate chaos, charming, she muttered. I hope your saving lives is better than your bedside manners. He shrugged, leaning closer to adjust a series of bio-nanobot conduits. I've been told I have an unusual bedside charm, mostly terrifying but charming in retrospect. The procedure was an experimental fusion of human regenerative therapy and Erythian biobot manipulation, an idea that would make most council members faint, drop their robes, or possibly ban all humans from entering their orbiting hospitals. Kane had no such fear. He thrived on impossible tasks and sarcastic commentary. He began the first phase by recalibrating the nanobots to synchronize with her own bioelectric fields, a delicate operation that required him to gesture precisely in three-dimensional space while muttering instructions to the AI assistant. Okay, he said, voice low, let's see if you can remember who's in charge, little bots. No funny business, I know your type. Lysera twitched her ears, a clear signal of her disbelief, and murmured, I'm pretty sure they're plotting to remove your fingers. Kane laughed, let them try, I've always wanted more hands. Hours passed in a rhythm of careful adjustments and dry humor. Kane spilled more than one reagent in his enthusiasm, narrowly missing a control panel that could have vaporized half the lab. Lysera made quips through her labored breaths, noting how humans really shouldn't be allowed near alien technology, and teasing Kane about the number of times he had said, hold still, while adjusting delicate nanobots. Every small success was a reason to celebrate, every failure an opportunity for sarcastic banter. When a biobot cluster misfired and zapped the table's levitation field, Kane jumped back, knocking over a tray of nutrient vials. Lysera's long ears flicked sharply and she said, you know, I was considering frowning at you, but this performance earns a standing ovation. Kane caught a vial midair and gave her a mock bow. Thank you, try the roast next. Between the technical maneuvers, Kane learned more about her. Lysera had a sharp wit that cut through the tension like a laser scalpel, and her humor was often lethal in the most polite way. She teased him about how humans were surprisingly loud when panicking, and how his insistence on wearing gloves indoors was mildly obsessive. Kane, in turn, mocked her long ears for twitching every time she detected a nanobot out of line. Yet beneath the teasing, there was a growing bond. She was beginning to trust his instincts, his improvisations, his ridiculous human charm. The procedure reached its riskiest phase when Kane attempted to reprogram her nanobots to override the failing self-repair sequence. The AI warned of cascading failure, the lights flickered, and a faint smell of ozone filled the lab. Kane muttered, "Not now, dramatic atmosphere, I'm busy saving your life." Lysera coughed lightly, wincing, and whispered, "I do appreciate the comedy even if I'm not certain it's safe." He leaned closer, grinning despite sweat sliding down his temples. "Comedy is my secret weapon. Works on humans and Erythians alike." Time blurred. Kane guided the nanobots through a delicate pattern, improvising as the alien circuits within her body reacted unpredictably. Lysera's pulse strengthened in small increments, and her long ears flicked in response to the rhythm of the nanobot swarms. At one point, a biobot cluster zipped past her ear, and she let out a short, sharp laugh. "Careful," she said, "you might electrocute my hair, or do humans not have hair concerns?" Kane chuckled. "No, but I do have a minor obsession with keeping people alive, hair optional." By the end of the cycle, subtle changes were evident. Her color had returned slightly, her pulse had normalized in tiny bursts, and the nanobots were responding to his adjustments instead of rebelling. Kane allowed himself a small victory smile even as she muttered, "I suppose your stubbornness has its merits, human. Don't get used to me admitting it." He nodded, mock solemnity in his tone. "I'll cherish it forever. Maybe even write a thank you card to my own ego." The chapter closed with them in quiet, shared fatigue. Lysera's breathing was easier, her eyes tracking him with a mixture of suspicion and faint amusement, and her long ears twitched rhythmically, as if signaling a private message only she understood. Kane slumped against a console, his hands covered in stains and smudges, but a smile tugged at his lips. Somewhere between the chaos of experimental biobot manipulation, the running commentary of dry humor, and the impossible odds, they had begun to trust each other. And in the quiet hum of the lab, punctuated by flickering lights and the occasional chirp of a rebellious drone, hope began to feel like something tangible, something alive and very human. The lab hummed with quiet energy, punctuated by the occasional squeak of a recalibrating levitation table and the soft beeping of monitors that Kane had long stopped interpreting as alarming. Lysera lay at the center of it all, her long ears twitching subtly, a faint flush returning to her cheeks. She opened her eyes just enough to glare at Kane, who was perched on a stool like a man half in triumph, half in exhaustion. "Human," she said, voice low but amused, "you're either a genius or utterly insane, possibly both. I can't decide which is worse for me." Kane grinned, brushing smudges of alien biofluids off his gloves. "I aim to please," he said. "Mostly please, occasionally terrify, and if I'm lucky, save lives in between." Her faint chuckle was the first real sound of humor she'd allowed in the lab since the first failed attempts of the Erythian Council. The final phase of the procedure had begun, and with it, a dance that Kane had rehearsed only in his own mind. Nanobots flared in tiny pulses, forming intricate patterns that would have seemed like abstract art to anyone without a deep understanding of alien biology. Kane manipulated their sequences with precise gestures, talking aloud to them as if they were mischievous children. "Okay, my little metal miscreants, no detours. We follow the map exactly, or I swear I'll make you clean the lab." Lysera twitched an ear. "Metal miscreants," she repeated, smirking despite herself. "Humans have the oddest methods of persuasion." Kane laughed. "Works on humans, apparently works on alien bots too. I'm versatile." The AI assistant had gone silent hours ago, perhaps in protest, perhaps in awe, leaving Kane to rely on intuition, experience, and humor. Lysera's own body seemed to react to his energy, flickering pulses running along the lines of nanobot-infused veins, colors shifting like liquid light under her skin. Kane noticed the first real signs of systemic recovery when her breathing, though still weak, became steady. Her long ears twitched rhythmically with each pulse, almost like they were dancing to a rhythm only they could hear. "Feeling a little less doomed?" he asked, half joking. She let out a faint breath that was probably a laugh, probably a groan, and said, "Let's just say the human menace is tolerable at the moment." The next few hours were a symphony of calculated improvisation. Kane adjusted sequences, corrected minor misfires, and when a nanobot cluster threatened to misalign, he caught it mid-flight, earning a small groan from Lysera. I'm beginning to think you're some kind of human circus act, she said. Kane bowed theatrically. Thank you, I'll be here all week. Try the alien roast, careful, it's electrifying. They exchanged small jokes, even as the process reached moments of tension where a single misstep could undo hours of work. Yet in every quip, every sarcastic remark, a deeper understanding grew. He was learning her limits, she was learning his intentions, and together they were redefining what either species thought possible. By the time the sun, or whatever passed for a sun in this floating medical orbit, shifted in the viewports, Kane noticed something remarkable. Lysera's nanobots had synchronized with her body entirely, responding to his guidance while stabilizing her physiology independently. Her pulse had normalized, her skin glowed faintly with healthy energy, and her long ears twitched with subtle, almost musical cadence. You've done it, she said softly, eyes tracking him with cautious admiration. I didn't believe it would happen. Humans are stubborn in ways I could never predict. Kane leaned back against a console, smearing one last streak of biobot fluid across his gloves. Yeah, well, stubbornness is a human specialty. Glad it worked this time. The Erythian Council had returned quietly, observing from a distance, their usual authority tempered by awe and disbelief. They murmured among themselves, but Lysera, fully conscious now, interrupted their commentary. You may resume your discussions, she said, a faint smirk on her lips. Or you may witness the remarkable capabilities of humans firsthand. Kane raised a brow, whispering to her, you know, that's dangerously diplomatic for someone just saved from death. She flicked her long ears in response. Call it post-recovery arrogance. With the procedure complete, Kane packed up the last of his tools, joking about how he should probably patent the human-alien hybrid rescue method before anyone could complain. Lysera watched him, a trace of amusement in her gaze. You've changed, she said after a pause, voice softening. Not just the mechanics of saving a life, you've changed my perspective on humans. Reckless, loud, and absurdly bold humans, yes, but capable of remarkable things. Kane shrugged, smiling. Guess it took someone on the brink of death to get me to admit I might be remarkable too. She blinked, then smirked, a spark in her eyes. Flattery will get you everywhere. Their humor continued as they left the lab. Kane helped her into a transport pod, quipping about gravity mishaps and how humans never mastered alien transportation etiquette. Lysera teased him back about spilling more fluids than necessary, but her tone was warmer, lighter. Every step forward reflected the bond they had formed, trust, laughter, and the mutual recognition of strength in one another. Where she had once faced death with cold resignation, she now moved forward with a fragile but genuine hope. Where he had once approached her life as a challenge, he now understood it as a responsibility, one that reshaped him, too. As the pod lifted off the station and the viewports filled with the swirling colors of the planet below, Kane looked at Lysera and said, You know, saving lives is great, but this might be my favorite part, witnessing the look on the Council's faces when we prove humans aren't entirely hopeless. She flicked her ears with a faint laugh. You're insufferable, I approve. The journey home was quiet in moments, punctuated by small jokes and the occasional playful debate over alien cuisine, human humor, and the improbable circumstances that had led them to this point. For both of them, the impossible had become real, the dangerous had become manageable, and laughter had carved a space between them where hope could grow. Kane had learned the value of patience, trust, and courage beyond instinct, and Lysera had learned that even the most unlikely allies could offer salvation and companionship. By the time the transport docked and they prepared to step into the waiting world of Erythian bureaucracy, they shared a look that was both conspiratorial and triumphant. Whatever political or societal challenges awaited, they had already faced something greater, the impossible act of saving a life when every rule, expectation, and probability insisted it could not be done. Kane smirked, quipping about how this would make an excellent dinner story for humans back on Earth. Lysera flicked her ears, muttering that humans were absurd, but she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. And as they stepped into the corridor, a universe that had once seemed rigid and insurmountable felt, for the first time, malleable, shaped by courage, humor, and a bond that neither species could have predicted.